Hello guys, this is me Simu Orahara, and in this video we will talk about Ichigo and the Grand Fisher's fight. I will be presenting you several facts related to this fight that some of you may not know, especially those who watched only the anime, because this fight was adapted to the anime and also to the first OVA of Bleach. The first OVA of Bleach adapted the important events from that fight, and when the anime came, the fight was adapted there as well. But whether it's OVA or anime, they made several changes and deleted a lot of things that I personally consider very important. Personally, I don't know whether these changes were the desire of Kobo himself or it was the studio who made them. For that, I will mainly focus on the differences that existed between the anime and the manga only. I may also mention a few facts that I found in the OVA. Therefore, most of these facts that I will mention in this video will be differences between anime and manga regarding this fight. So, first of all, the events of that fight began in the anime starting from the middle of episode 7 and in the manga starting from the first chapter of volume 3, which had a cover of Inoue Orihime. As you know, Kobo has a special style for his volume covers. Each volume has one character on its cover and that character has its own poem, so that the character itself is the one who narrates the poem. Anyway, the first fact that I can start with is that the anime they made Inoue Orihime after knowing that June 17 is the anniversary of Ichigo's mother's death. She narrates the poem that was mentioned in the volume 3 while she was watching the rain falling from the window. What she said in that scene are the words of her poem in volume 3. And another thing that can't be considered a big change, but it's a nice thing that I like it and love to share with you. It did not appear in the anime. On the night Ichigo and his family were preparing to visit his mother's grave, we watched in the anime how Ishin separates tasks to his sons, and then we saw Ichigo in his room talking with Rukia about the memorial of his mother's death. In the manga, Kobo showed us this sweet scene, how on that night Yuzu slept next to Karin in each other's lap instead of sleeping in her bed, and this scene did not appear in the anime. And I think Kobo showed through it the extent of sadness that Yuzu was feeling, and also Karin. So as the date of that memory approached, she sleeps next to her sister and she misses the tenderness and embrace of her mother Masaki. So this is from one side. On the other side, there is another important fact. The 7th episode ended with the scene from Soul Society, in which one of the Shinigami appears informing another Shinigami that he should go to the real world to find out about Kuchiki Rukia and why she has been staying for so long in the real world. This character, guys, is a filler, and everything related to it does not exist in the manga. Therefore, all the events that he appeared in the fight of Grand Fischer against Ichigo is nowhere in the manga. For example, the meeting that he had with Rukia and telling her the reason of him coming, or even his fight with Ichigo, these are events that never happened in the manga. And therefore, as a result of his intervene as a part in the Grand Fisher's incident, many differences occurred. And the other fact that can be talked about is that in the anime they made the scene of the Grand Fisher's attack on Karin so sudden. In the meantime, Ichigo was fighting that Shinigami. Karin seemed to barely see what the Grand Fisher looks like. In the manga it was different. Rather, it gave us an overview about the extent of Karin's spiritual strength. In the manga, the Grand Fisher used the girl doll that Ichigo saw 6 years ago, and he stood on a hill. Karin was able to see that trap girl so clearly to the point that the Grand Fisher told her, "You can't see me." And then in this wonderful scene, the Grand Fisher showed his true form behind the doll, and Karin was also able to even see what the real Grand Fisher looks like, which made the last one admire her and say, "What a talented girl you really are." And this thing that was not in the anime. In the anime, Karin seemed to find it difficult to see him. And the next fact is regarding the course of the battle between Ichigo and the Grand Fisher, and a lot of changes we can find here. In the anime, for example, the battle started with an attack on the Grand Fisher and then entered Rukia using Kido, and then that Shinigami enters and also get defeated by the Grand Fisher, and when Rukia wanted to enter the fight again, Ichigo prevented her, saying that this was his fight, and then remained alone confronting him. In the manga, the fight from the beginning was between Ichigo and the Grand Fisher. Ichigo from the beginning did not allow Rukia to intervene, meaning even that Kido she used, Ichigo prevented prevented her from using it and asked her and Kon to take Karin and Yuzu somewhere safe. And the following fact is Kon in his request for Rukia to help Ichigo in his fight against the Grand Fisher. The anime removed one of the scenes that showed us one of the wonderful aspects of Kon's personality. In the manga, as we said, Ichigo asked Rukia to get away and not get involved in his fight, and that was exactly what she did, to the point of her returning to where Kon and the others were. So Kon, when he knew that Rukia left Ichigo alone fighting the Grand Fisher, he requested her to go immediately to help Ichigo. He even sat on his knees and he started begging her to go to help him, and that was not in the anime, and Kon's role was only limited in comedy. And the following fact, the appearance of Ukitake between anime and the manga. As we saw in the anime and the manga, Rukia was going through an internal conflict about the issue of helping Ichigo in his fight against the Grand Fisher or not. There she remembered the words of her captain Okitake when he was talking about the two different type of fights, one for life and one for the pride. In the anime, Okitake appeared in the uniform of the captain we know, but in the manga he appeared to wear this way, black uniform. And I think Kobo in that period was not yet settled on a certain design for captains, therefore Okitake appeared in that shape. The next fact is the second part of the battle of Ichigo and the Grand Fisher. In the last part of the battle, several differences were made. Among those in the anime, they made the scene of Masaki speaks up of how much she's proud of Ichigo. This thing did not happen in the manga. Also, the talk of that Shinigami about the death wish. All this stuff did not occur in the manga. Ichigo fought the Grand Fisher although he was turning himself to his mother's body. Moreover, in this wonderful scene, Ichigo cuts off the Grand Fisher arm and he falls down. And then when Rukia and Ichigo thought that the battle was over, the Grand Fisher turned himself in his doll to Ichigo's mother. And after a short fighting between them, the Grand Fisher escaped. But in the anime, the Grand Fisher escaped in his real form, while in the anime, he escaped in the form of Masaki. The following fact is the end of the battle. The end of the battle, as in the anime and the manga, we saw Ichigo throw himself in Rukia's arm. But the difference that was in the anime is that we saw that Shinigami next to Ichigo and Rukia watching that beautiful view, but in the manga, Kon was the person next to Rukia in Ichigo and not that Shinigami. And the following fact is Rukia's treatment to Ichigo. In the anime, after the end of the battle, they directly jump to Ichigo's scene standing in front of his mother's grave and Ishin coming towards him. But in the manga, before that scene, Kobo showed us a scene of Rukia and Ichigo after this last one returned to his human body. Rukia in this scene mentioned an important information that should have been mentioned in the anime. It is the fact that the spiritual body, when it gets wounds or any damage, he will feel it even after returning to his human body. And this happened with Ichigo. In this scene we can see how he still suffers from his battle's wounds even in his human body. And in this beautiful scene, she gave him those bandages to put them on his face. And the following fact, removing the 10 years scene. As I mentioned in the video about Ishin past, the studio removed the scene that happened between Ichigo and Ishin when this last one said that 10 years had passed after the death of Masaki. As I told you in that video, a lot of people built theories around that scene before Kobo revealed Ishin's past. And by the way guys, this scene appeared in the OVA, but in the anime they removed it and I don't know why. And the next fact, the truth behind Masaki's death. And here we get to one of the most notable differences and facts, which is I also stated in the video about Ishin. And here I talk about a scene where Ishin spoke about how Masaki would be happy on the other side, while Ichigo said to himself about his father, he did not know that my mother's soul had been eaten by the Grand Fisher, meaning the soul of Masaki originally did not climb to Soul Society. The strange thing here is that this scene has not been mentioned in the anime, not even in the OVA. That's why I think that has something to do with Kobo himself. It must be him who told them do not turn that scene into anime or even put it in the OVA. Why? I think because he may have another idea, the idea that will make the return of Masaki in the future events. For example, here appearing in Soul Society or through an event related to the Quincy or the Vanderreich. The important thing is that this scene did not appear in the anime nor the OVA. And the following truth is the last scene of the appearance of the Grand Fisher. This is the strangest truth that did not appear in the anime. After the end of Ichigo's battle and the Grand Fisher, Kobo moved us elsewhere. He did not specify the name of that place, but it's probably Wikomondo, where the Grand Fisher appears to be treated by someone, and above them someone else watching what happens. If you notice, guys, the person who was treating the Grand Fisher, his shape is similar, if we can't say the same, as the character we saw when Ichigo and the rest entered the Wikomondo for the first time, and Ishida fought him, while the other person above them, we don't know him. And after that, in the next page, the person removed the Grand Fisher's mask and appears in the Arankara shape we know. These pages are from chapter 25, the last chapter of the third volume, which means we are talking about the beginnings of the story. I don't know what Kobo was thinking about this scene, because almost the same scene appeared in the anime in the episode 110. He only appeared alone with the same body from chapter 25. And the last fact that I include in this video is this nice fact about Kobo participation in acting Kon's voice in the first OVA. Kon had a very short role in the first OVA where he only said 2 sentences. Nesa, what about you, Nesa? And that's why Kobo personally performed that voice and said the 2 lines. So guys, those were the most of the facts and differences between anime and the manga related to the fight of Ichigo against the Grand Fisher. If the differences occurred because of Kobo, well, we will not object because he knows better what is the best for his story. But if these differences occurred because of the studio's desire, then I think they should have kept the battle as it was, or at least not remove some important scenes. So guys, see you in my next video.